welcome to Before I'm Successful. My name is Csongor, and today we have an extremely special guest. Our first guest, Mateusz Andrulewicz. Mateusz is the CEO of University of Birmingham Startup Society, and actually he is the biggest startup addict I've ever seen. He's such an addict that even his Twitter handle is named Startup Matt. He is extremely passionate about entrepreneurship and digital marketing, launched his own startups, and also worked at many others. The biggest of them was Google. Originally from Poland, he is now studying business management at University of Birmingham in his final year. He is also really passionate about traveling. His last experience lasted for 6 weeks in Indonesia, and shortly summarizing it, 17 flights, hundreds of islands, and Komodo dragons. So, welcome Mateusz.
Hey, thanks Csongor. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the intro. That was hell of a research, I would say.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And
thank you.
I was thinking that we should start with our history.
Yeah.
How we met.
Because pretty interesting, pretty random as well.
Exactly. So, we met first year when you were trying to launch a startup.
Yeah.
Hyperfix.
Yeah.
But I was thinking this morning, I can't remember how you approached me or how we get in touch at all.
Well, actually, it was funny because we met at a party. I met you through a mutual friend at like literally, I think this was my only Fab night ever in my university history. Like I never went to Fab after this again. And I met you there, and like I knew that you were a computer scientist. And actually, I remember the first message I sent you, and that was like, "Hey, from what I remember, I think you're doing like computer science." That was something like this, and you were like, "Yeah, I am." And then I was like, "Okay, so I'm doing this and this," and then we met. So it was pretty random, you know. But that's how things are, I would say, in startups especially.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember that after that we spent the time working on the startup, yeah. But unfortunately it didn't work out.
Yes.
But it was an amazing experience.
Oh yeah.
But I'm curious, do you still feel bad about Hyperfix?
No, and actually I think it's still, like, I still believe in the idea. I think it actually solves a real pain, and often when I talk to people and tell them about the idea, they're like, oh, that's actually sounds pretty nice, you know? Especially for some markets, like for example, Eastern Europe, where it's much more difficult than here. But yeah, I haven't really found a solution how to tackle the challenges that we faced back then, so maybe in the future. I don't feel bad though. Yeah, I'm really positive about the experience overall.
It was really
amazing.
Fun. Yeah. I remember I was wondering maybe, because I'm thinking that some successful people just managed to get a project off the ground, maybe because of their success and their popularity. In contrast, I remember that you were living quite far from university.
Yeah.
And this probably didn't help you to get so many connections at university.
Yeah.
But then now, 2.5 years afterwards, I mean, I think you are one of the most well-connected people at the university.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, what's the secret behind it? What changed since Hyperfix?
I actually think that nothing changed, you know, and that's the secret. Like I was just doing my thing, and I kept doing it from year one to, well, maybe not from year one, but from, let's say, second half of year one till now. And I think that's just it, you know. I always was a bit, you know, skeptical about living in student halls. I just wanted to like keep it focused. It wasn't even about, you know, working and so on. It was more about just, I don't know, individualism and just like, you know, doing my thing. I'm just this kind of person. So I didn't really want to live in student halls, and kind of this distance worked for me, you know. So I think that's just it.
So do you think that by focusing on entrepreneurship and marketing, that's what made other people approach you and get in touch with you?
Firstly, I would say focusing on myself, you know, because in my year one, I didn't know that I want to do entrepreneurship and all this.
Okay.
So I was just kind of focusing on myself. I had this space of my own, and from then, you know, it went, well, we got to entrepreneurship and all this. But the very important part was the space and the fact that, you know, I had some place where I could think stuff, where I could evaluate and so on. And then I came to entrepreneurship, and that developed, and yeah, because I kept doing my thing, because, you know, I had this space of my own, yeah, I think it just kind of attracted people.
So you keep mentioning that working on yourself and your space.
Yeah.
Could you go a bit deeper on that?
This is something really important for me. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm an extrovert, actually. I really relax when I'm alone.
Okay.
And for example, I don't know, when I go for a weekend with friends, you know, for a trip for 3 days, after those 3 days, I'm really tired. So even though I had fun and it was, you know, an amazing trip, I'm really tired. So I really need this space, and I don't really know what I do there, but it's just, you know, my mind is kind of flowing. I think things through. I don't know. I think how my day went. I think how I could do stuff better, and so on and so on. I just constantly think, you know, and I need this space to constantly think, because if I have this buzz, this distraction all the time, I just get tired. It's exhausting for me. So that was kind of also the part of the reason why I didn't leave, you know, on campus and here.
I understand. That's pretty interesting, actually. Then you had extremely lot of time to work on yourself.
Yeah.
I'm curious, let's say not in the last year, but in the last 2 years while you were working on yourself, what behavior or habit do you think mostly influenced your outcomes? I mean, outcomes like getting into Google, then president of Startup Society, and all this wow stuff.
I think habit-wise, that's a long story, but obviously, you know, you appreciate how important habits are and how complex this is. Yeah. Behavior-wise, I would say just persistence, you know, and just keeping, you know, just doing things all the time, you know, from the beginning to the end, and kind of not giving up. That was really important, especially in case of Google. With Google, you know, I applied before I had an interview at Google. I already applied to like 50 years in industry, you know, because actually I was supposed to do a placement here.
Yeah, I remember.
And yeah, that would be really bad. I'm so glad I didn't do that. But because I applied to those 50 jobs, I already had experience. I did the interviews and all this. So I was ready for the interview at Google. And when they reached out, well, that was easy from there, you know. So I think this was really important, the persistence.
So whatever project you put your mind to, you just keep going till the end.
Obviously, you can't go crazy, because if you don't see that you're doing something wrong, that's not going to work, exactly. And then you'll just waste your time. But to some extent, yes, definitely.
Imagine us working still on Hyperfix, doing the end promo video. Yeah. Probably we would be somewhere, but maybe the market isn't there, as we found out. Yeah. That's interesting, actually. Returning still a bit to habits, I'm a huge fan of habits, actually, and I work so much on all the time finding a new habit, trying to install it in my life. And if I like it, I keep going with it. If I don't like it, I just throw it away. Yeah. So I'm curious, what is your unique habit, which do you think makes your days, makes you perform at this level?
Actually, I don't have anything fancy, you know. My habits are kind of simple. I just have like a set that I follow every day. Okay. I'm not gonna share what those are, but it's really nothing fancy. It's simple stuff. But for me, the important thing about habits is that this was kind of a breaking point for me as well. That was during my second year at uni. I read this book. I don't know, you read quite a lot, so you might have heard of this, The Power of Habits.
Actually, I haven't read that.
It's really good. It's really good, and that was when I realized when I started to look closer at what I do, at my habits, and I also learned how to break them. And this was super powerful. This is extremely powerful. Right. When you know how to break a habit, that's a game changer. So yeah, after that, I started to experiment. But again, this was nothing fancy, because I know that you know like all of this fancy stuff, like, I don't know, brushing your teeth. But mine are pretty simple. But I follow them every day, and it's a set that I've had for months, and it works for me.
Could you give us just one example?
Yeah, so for example, I really hate exercising. Like, I absolutely hate exercising. I can't stand gym. I like swimming, but everything. So I started doing this thing where I exercise in the morning and in the evening, and I try to figure out how to make this in such a way that I actually like it, or that I'm neutral towards it. Yeah. So I just started to do like firstly 30 push-ups in the mornings and 30 push-ups in the evenings, and that's it, you know, nothing else.
Yeah.
And then I realized that it actually works because I started doing this. I did this for a month, and then I noticed that I don't even notice that I'm doing push-ups. I just do it.
Yeah.
So I don't think about it. I'm not pissed off that I'm doing them. I'm not happy. I just do them. And then I started to increase this to 60 push-ups. So it's kind of a healthy thing.
Yeah.
That's, so, you know, I have this physical activity every day in the morning and after all the work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not annoying, which normally it would be for me. So this is just an example. And I do this like every day since I think June, July, and it works really well. I don't miss sports at the same time, you know. I do a bit of sports, so it's fine.
It's actually interesting. Maybe you know Vishen Lakiani, the CEO of Mind Valley. Have you heard about it?
No, but I think I know where you're getting at.
So he's check whether he's healthy or not. Is like whenever he wants to, or somebody tells him to do 50 push-ups right on the spot. If he can't do 50 push-ups, he feels like he's not in shape. And other than that, he keeps doing 50 push-ups every day just to make sure that he is right at the mark. And then he's not a gym addict, no, nothing. But it's the same. It's the same like you.
Similar. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I thought that you were actually gonna mention. Have you read the Tools of the Titans by Tim Ferriss?
I read a few chapters. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty big book. But actually, what I was just saying about the habit with the exercising, that's actually an inspiration that I had from Tim Ferriss, because I remember that in one chapter, I think I don't remember the details, but he said something that there was this guy who kind of also hated exercise and he got fit just by doing one push-up a day. And I was like reading this and I was like, one push-up, no way, like that's not enough, you know? So I kind of just tweaked it, but that was the inspiration. I don't remember what was the name of the guy though. It was also like an entrepreneur or someone like that.
Yeah, usually if they don't have too much time for exercising, this is the best that you can do for your body at least.
Exactly.
So you were talking about the fact that you managed to find the secret formula for breaking bad habits. And there is an extremely bad habit for us young individuals, social media.
Social media, yeah.
So I know that's like the drug for procrastination. But I believe, from what I saw, that you managed to find out how to use social media not to procrastinate, but to make your life better in a positive manner.
That's true, although it's dangerous. It's not that easy, I would say.
Could you tell me more about it?
Yeah, social media is... Yeah, see, for me, it's actually not that easy with social media. It's one of my weak spots,
really?
Especially because I work so much on social media. So, you know, startup society, like I sometimes catch myself just going to Facebook just to check the stats, you know, and that's not good. And same on LinkedIn. I spend quite a lot of time on LinkedIn posting. I don't really scroll there. But yeah, it's a dangerous game, you know. But definitely, like, social media is a really bad habit that many people have a problem with. To be honest, I haven't figured out how to break that one. Because I do notice when I go for social media, so for example, when I'm a bit bored or when I want to chill a bit, but at the same time, I didn't figure out an alternative necessarily. I did figure out how to limit social media so that I don't procrastinate, basically what you said. But I still don't think that the amount of social media I have every day is... I think I could have less. So I wouldn't say I mastered this. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one, especially if you mix social media for both work and personal stuff.
But that's the thing, that you do it mostly for work stuff and building your network and posting about your achievements. So that's why I would say that you are not posting on Instagram all the fancy stuff that you do. You mostly post your achievements and share on LinkedIn lots of stuff. So I think that that's a positive way to use social media, actually. That's the importance of social media.
Could be. Although I'm not a big fan of social media, so I wouldn't say. Well, in case of LinkedIn, that's different.
Yeah.
In case of obviously managing a business page on Facebook, that's completely different.
Yeah.
But with Instagram, I don't really think there's anything positive about Instagram, to be honest. You know that I didn't have Instagram for a very long time. And then I remember this really terrifying moment when everyone switched from Snapchat to Instagram. And I was like the last man on this ship, and I just hated the fact that they made me switch to Instagram, but I did in the end. And obviously I tried to kind of make the best out of it just by kind of focusing on travel and posting the stuff that I really loved from my trips and so on. But still, I wouldn't say that there is anything positive about Instagram. I'm not a big fan.
All right, not even for marketing purposes.
Well, for marketing, it's obviously effective. It's definitely an effective platform, especially with younger audience being there right now. But for personal use, I don't like it. Right. I'm a bit old school in this sense, though.
So you mentioned travel. So let's just dive a tiny bit into it, because it's interesting that you traveled so many times in the past year, I think, and all these amazing trips. So could you tell us more about how do you organize those trips? I mean, 17 flights, hundreds of islands, that needs some planning, for sure.
Actually, I'm an amateur here, but I'm getting better at it. Because the first trips that I went to, the bigger ones that you've mentioned, were planned by my friend who's really good at this. But then when I was going to US and Japan a bit, I decided that I need to kind of learn this stuff too. So I started doing it. It's really complicated. I think trip planning is basically like ultimate planning exercise, because basically there is so many factors that you have to predict and can't really predict unless you research really quickly. So it's difficult, but yeah, it's also fun at the same time once you really get into it. It just takes a lot of time, you know?
That's for sure.
And yeah, but although I think it's still fairly easy for me because I'm kind of a planner person, so planning comes easy to me. I know that some people struggle with this, so that could even be more difficult in that case.
So I'm actually pretty sure that planning works really good for you.
Yeah.
Especially, I remember that during second year, I think, you had 3 jobs at the same time.
Yeah. Actually, 4. 4, yeah.
So
4.
that required amazing time planning skills, time management skills.
Yeah, although it was also kind of a beautiful chaos, you know. It was definitely a lot of planning. You couldn't do that without planning, but it was at the same time a lot of creative chaos, I would say.
So how did you manage?
Okay, firstly, it's impossible to manage 4 jobs. Okay, there's no way you're gonna manage 4 jobs and you'll avoid clashes and all this. There's just no way you can do that. It was tough, but to be honest, I think this year is more intense.
It is.
Yeah, because last year, that's another thing. I had 4 jobs, but really only maybe 2 of them were really consuming, and the other 2 were kind of extra. Just kind of stuff to do when I'm free or just to get some extra money. Whereas this year, both of my jobs, so I work for Ramp Network right now and I do the Startup Society, both really require they're kind of capital intense in a sense. They require a lot of resources, mostly time, but also energy to run. So I think this year is much more intense.
Oh, okay.
So the 4 jobs last year, that was definitely difficult. You know, a lot of calendar, a lot of reminders, like, I don't know, 100 different lists for reminders just to keep it in order. If that's what you're asking about, you know, so like Trello or Table, all this kind of stuff just to organize things. That was definitely a must. But at the same time, I think this year is much more intense and yeah.
So you worked a lot at startups, mostly. Yeah. And then you worked at Google, also which is a large organization. How would you compare these 2 environments? And if you would give advice to a young person, what would you suggest? Startup or large organization?
This is a big question, first of all. So let's split it. So firstly, the difference between the two environments. Yeah. So I think obviously when you go to a large corporations, because that's what Google is at this point. They have the startup-y vibe, okay, but they're a corporation.
Yeah.
When you go to a corporation, it's going to be completely different. So everything is going to be organized in a sense that everything that you want to do, there is going to be a process in place already. And that's the biggest difference, because at a startup, if you want to do something, you either come up with the process or you just do something, whatever, something random. And then after you do those random things a couple of times, then you come up with the process. And this applies to anything. I don't know, you want to do a marketing campaign, anything really. You everything you come up with yourself, even if you're not the founder, even if you're just part of a startup. So that's the major difference. Also, I think the huge difference for me is culture. So, you know, at big corporations, you'll have a culture that is already well developed. And at Google, that was actually a huge advantage because the culture was promoting all the right things, at least in my case, in my environment. So I was in Dublin. At startups, you don't really have any culture, which kind of limits you. But on the other hand, you're part of a bigger ecosystem of all those small companies, small startups. So there is also kind of a culture, but it's definitely less developed. And you know, culture has a lot of benefits. For example, the network that you mentioned before. At Google, the culture kind of allowed me to grow this network and meet a lot of people. We had stuff like lunch ninjas, for example, where you would just say, okay, I want to go with a random person for lunch once a week. And that was amazing, you know, every week or like once per month. And this is amazing. This is something that really enables you, kind of grows you as an individual. So I think those are big differences. And then the second part of your question, what was it? Could you remind me?
So what would you suggest to a young person? Which one to choose?
Yeah. So that's a tough one. I decided to choose corporation first. So I'm going to Google after university. And the reason why I did that was because I think this is going to help me later when I want to do a startup. Obviously with Google on my CV, you know, you need to have some kind of a track record. And this applies not only to VC funding, which would be the obvious reason, but to anything really, attracting also people and so on. So that's why I chose Google for now. But I don't think one way is better than the other. It really depends on the individual. We were talking before the interview about Daniel, who, since I've known him, he was really against working for someone. So I would say kudos to him for you know, having the balls to do his own thing after university. And I wouldn't say that what he did was wrong. Obviously, he's on a very tough path right now. And many people who go out of uni straight into startups or self-employment will be on a difficult path. But at the same time, it's really amazing. It's impressive. And I'm sure that he'll soon find his way, you know. It's really difficult to say which one is better.
So it depends probably on how you feel about yourself. Do you want to take the risk? Or go for the safe route for now and then take the risk?
Also on your vision, I think big time. And probably a bit on how long you plan. How ahead you plan. Because you know me, I look at things like what's gonna happen in 20 years. So for me, it makes sense to go to Google now, because when I think about a year or two in a scale of 20 years, that's really nothing, and it could kind of have a really high return on the time investment. So for me, it makes sense. But if someone has a shorter perspective, which is not wrong, it's just different, because people, you know, plan differently. If someone has a shorter perspective, then maybe, going into startups straight away might make sense.
So you're playing the long game.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so we talked a lot about paid work so far, but I saw that you introduced unpaid work in your routine also. You've been lately to San Francisco at a 5,000 people conference, Startup Grind, and then you've been last year in Lisbon at Web Summit, which is like 70,000 people, all the techie guys are there, so it's amazing. And you were volunteering there, right? So how did you decide to pursue this path of volunteering at huge conferences?
I'm actually really glad that you asked this question because I kind of wanted you guys to take this out as a message from this. Seriously, I think this is a really important question, and I'm going to do a complex answer to this, okay? So firstly, yeah, I did a web summit, I did Startup Grind, that was volunteering, and also Startup Society, you know, nobody pays for that too, and that's like a full-time job. And I think there are two parts to it. Firstly, I completely redefined kind of how I see value. And I think this is really important, especially if you're in entrepreneurship and startups. And you know this, I know that you understand this, but actually many people who go into this at the beginning, they don't understand it. I don't think we understood it in our first year. So basically people, especially students, young people, that when they think of value, they think of time and money usually. So how much it's going to cost me, how long is it going to take me? But actually there is much more to it. Value has, you know, many more definitions. It's broader than just monetary worth or time resources. And when I understood that, you know, it's kind of opportunistic perspective, but it's important that you look at things and you see how you can benefit from them broadly and not only look at the costs in terms of money and time.
Short time.
Exactly. So for me, Web Summit was just an endless list of advantages. And yeah, sure, I need to pay for my flight tickets and my accommodation, but it doesn't matter because there are so many advantages. And that's kind of how I started to look at things. And it was the same with Startup Grind, even bigger because, well, with Startup Grind, I had to go to the US. So, I mean, but again, the list was just endless and even longer than with Web Summit because it was Silicon Valley, you know, and all this. So pretty exciting. And with Startup Society again, and I wouldn't actually go back and change any of those, even though, as you said, this was volunteering. So I gave up my time, my savings, whatever. So that's the first part of the answer, and that I think this is really important. And the second part is giving back, just giving back. And again, I think this is especially important in terms of startups, because we are all a community, a community of people who, you know, struggle, and they will fail constantly, and then suddenly they'll come up with something huge. That's how it works, and you need to give back because firstly, you help those people, and those are actually people who need support, you know, in any way. It's not just like knowledge support and so on. It's also like even mentally, just being, you know, in a community. And secondly, you need to give back because it comes back. And in startups, it comes back massively. It's, you know, like you hear all those random stories, like even how we met, and all this is pretty random, right? So I really believe that you need to give back, and this is kind of the mentality that I think we're lacking in Europe. It's much more popular in Silicon Valley actually, where people do that. But here in Europe, it's kind of, especially in Poland and in Eastern European countries. When I was in Silicon Valley, I met the chapter director for Startup Grind Warsaw, and he was telling me that basically they really struggle with Startup Grind in Poland because people expect that everything will be ready for them, but nobody wants to like volunteer or help out. And that's that's kind of crazy if you think about it. Why? Like there's so many benefits in you just going and, I don't know, saying hi to people. Here is registration, you know? Like there's an endless list, you know, but people don't look at it that way, and I think that's a mistake. So actually my plan for Google, I'm gonna have my core role, but I already have like tons of reminders to make sure that I do this. I want to go to adopted startup programs, Google for Entrepreneurs. Well, they're called Google for Startups now. And I just want to say, hey guys, if you need someone to be at your front desk at events or something like that, I can be that guy, you know? Because you meet people through that, not only founders and people who attend those events, but also people who organize those events. And then, you know, 6 months later, you're part of the team. That's how it works. But people don't seem to understand that. So do understand this, guys. This is really important.
So basically that long list, what you are talking about, the advantages, probably the main advantage is that you build connections.
But you know, also you kind of see different perspectives, you know? Like Web Summit was a completely different environment than what we have here in Birmingham for me. it was just a group of a couple of thousand tech guys, well, and women as well. And it was just crazy, you know, it's something completely different. And this perspective kind of changed my thinking in some way too, you know. And with Silicon Valley, I mean, that was just another level. I first of all, I learned why I saw myself why Silicon Valley is so praised in the startup world. So that was advantage number one. But also, I think it shaped my mentality in some way too. I could see how people talked. I could see how people were actually proud of, you know, of having their startups and so on. It was different. It was different. So, but yeah, connections definitely. Yeah.
I truly believe that in Silicon Valley, this startup community is so shaped. Because, for example, I read that in Silicon Valley there is no such thing that stealing the idea of somebody else, because they respect innovation so much that rather than stealing the ideas of others, they help them just to progress. So that's wow.
I also actually yesterday when I was doing my research for dissertation, I read a very similar things that basically there is an unwritten rule that you don't steal employees from other companies.
Okay.
You know, so you kind of don't try to make them switch when you're in similar industries. So yeah, definitely, it is really well shaped.
Speaking about Silicon Valley, probably your role model is living around Silicon Valley. Who do you look up to in terms of a role model?
Actually, it's kind of difficult to say. I would say I change it a lot. It really depends. Also because startup world is pretty dynamic, and there is a lot happening. Recently, I've been concentrating on Europe.
Okay.
My two most followed startups and people associated with those startups are Revolut and Monzo. I've completely fell in love with challenger banks. But for example, actually, I'm now kind of changing my opinion because yesterday I read a really bad article on the CEO of Revolut. But for me it changes. Definitely Elon Musk. I mean, this guy is crazy. I think he's a huge inspiration. And what he's trying to do is absolutely amazing. But there are a lot of people. The Y Combinator team, Paul Graham, you know, and his essays. I mean, that's just mind-blowing, knowledge-wise, especially. So it depends on the perspective. I wouldn't say I have one person that I constantly follow and look up to.
So you said that you really admire Elon Musk. What is it that you admire about him? The fact that what he's trying to do for humanity, or his business side? I think
that the big factor is his vision, and believe me, this guy has everything worked out for the next 5-10 years in terms of what he wants to do, and it's actually amazing how you look at any of his companies and you see how everything kind of comes together. The further you get on the timeline. And this is really impressive. I really appreciate people who have a long-term vision, and this is also something that I'm really working on because I feel like I'm lacking a bit business-wise. And he has this, so that's absolutely amazing. And I mean, you know, the work that he puts into this and how he loves this. I think this is a really huge inspiration for entrepreneurs who are just starting out. On the other hand, though, there is danger with this because you don't want to go in fully 100% crazy into your idea. I mean, you will, but okay, maybe not 200% crazy in your idea, because then you kind of have blinders and you don't see when you know when you should kind of back off. But still, I think he's a huge inspiration and definitely an example.
Speaking about long-term vision, and this is lately me and Flavius started reading about Stoicism.
I heard about this, yes.
It's a philosophy type. And we came up with an interesting question that we would like to ask you. So, what would you do if you would have one day left to live?
See, there are two. I think I have two answers to that. One would be to just go somewhere, anywhere. Although this is a bit pointless because I mean it would take me more time to get somewhere exciting, probably. But I think I would actually do what I do right now every day. I would just follow my schedule. I would just do my routine and do the stuff that I really like, because I feel at the moment at least, I don't know how it's gonna be at Google, but at the moment at least, the stuff that I do, I really love it. And when I kind of have those amazing days when I'm fully in my routine and I actually like do stuff for Startup Society and so on, this is extremely rewarding for me, extremely satisfying. I absolutely love it. So yeah, I think I would actually do that.
So on your last day, you would just do the same routine.
Yeah.
And then what would you do if
I would have pizza though.
Pizza?
Yes,
all right.
definitely. Yeah, I absolutely love
Domino's?
pizza. No Domino's. Actually, here in the UK, they don't have good pizza. At least in Birmingham. So this is a business idea, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And what about if you would have 7 days left to live?
Then I would go travel, 100%. I would go travel.
Where would you go?
I have a couple of places. There is an archipelago of islands. I'm not sure if it's south or north from Yemen. There's like civil war there right now, so you can't really fly in. And the archipelago is called like the most alienated place on earth. So you have like blue tarantulas and like weird trees and all this.
Wow.
And there's like, I think they have like 2,000 tourists per year.
Really?
Yeah, and it's crazy. But you can actually get there. It's just people are scared. But I would go there. Yeah.
That's
if I had 1 week, I would go there 100%. Yeah.
And what if you would have 3 years left to live?
That's a tough one. Can I ask, why are you asking those questions? Like, is there some kind of like good or bad answer behind this? Because you mentioned like stoicism at the beginning, and then you kind of...
There is no good or bad answer.
Okay.
We are just curious about how people think, how their mindset and what on their focus changes from 1 day to 7 days to 3 years.
Okay.
So we are just curious about it.
So obviously 3 years gives you a bit more time. Yeah, I don't want to answer this in a corny way, but I would probably do travel and startups in some way. Try to maximize kind of my startup time to have the funds to go travel, if that's possible. But yeah, probably something like this. It's a tough question though.
So going for a quick exit with a startup?
Yeah,
and then
for example, yeah, potentially. Although it's really it's really difficult to take this perspective,
It gives you a bit of thinking, oh wow,
insight.
What I would really love to do.
I think if I had 3 years left, I would go to Poland, man, and I would just like preach entrepreneurship.
Okay.
But like, I don't know, I would go to like high schools, for example, and just like tell kids like how to problem solve or like what is value, you know, and stuff like this. It sound like this because this would be, I know that this would be extremely rewarding for me, and then I would also have this guarantee that I'm leaving something.
Exactly.
And I always kind of had this vision that I want to come back to Poland at some point and be this. I think in academia they call it like returnee entrepreneurs, so people who kind of gather all the knowledge abroad and then come back to the country and significantly increase the value that they add to the ecosystem. So this, probably something like this. That's
so nice, because actually that just it's like our vision with Before I'm Successful. So we also want to teach high school students and people between the age of 18 to 25 just to know what's important in their life.
It's really this is really important because people, especially you probably find this annoying too, but here in the UK, universities kind of set you up just for corporate jobs.
Exactly.
And it's not even, I'm not saying that they should now start pushing people for startups, but it's like they don't even sell this vision that you can do something else.
That's right. That's right.
People like don't know it, and there's so many options. You can go startup, you can go self-employment, which are, two different things. Yeah. University could teach you how to be a solo lawyer, a solo accountant, whatever. There are startups and then there are corporations. It's not like you can just go. And B, also, I don't know how it is here. I don't know how it is in Romania. But actually, I know that here it's also a problem in the UK. Students in high school, they have no knowledge of entrepreneurship whatsoever. One of the dragons from the Dragons Den, Peter Jones, I remember that he had a program a few years ago where he would basically give high school students some cash without any liability, so they
Yeah.
wouldn't have to return the cash to him.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that if they kind of if they make profits, or if they make profits, they kind of give him back the amount that he gave him.
Okay.
And actually, many students did.
Really?
And yeah, and he was saying that like, and the rate was crazy. It wasn't like 10%. It was like 40%.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And this is really important because it's even if someone goes to sell oranges or, I don't know, ice cream or whatever, it's still really important that people do that.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So, you know, this is really good vision and spreading this knowledge to different groups, especially to young people. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah. We are approaching our final question, which will be probably the most useful for our audience. So, we want to, every week, we want to give a challenge to our viewers, a new habit or behavior, which they will install in their lives for the next 7 days. And then if they enjoy it, they'll keep it. If not, just throw it away. Next week, the next video will come, a new challenge. So what would be your challenge for our audience, for these young generations, the future successful generation? How should they set up themselves for success by just installing one habit in their lives?
Okay, I'm not sure how it fits into the 1 week time frame, but I think it could. I would say the challenge is try to, instead of, when someone tells you something, instead of thinking why you wouldn't do it, try to think why you would do it, and then think why you wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? So first look at the yes, why yes, and then look at why no. And then kind of balance it out. Because many people, when for example, if I were to approach an average student right now, at my course at least, and say, hey, I have this crazy good idea, and let's do it, they would first start thinking, okay, but I have dissertation, but I have, I don't know, it's Easter break, you know, like this endless list of things. And then they would come to yes, and maybe come up with a few good yeses, but those would be already kind of overtaken by the no's. And the reason why I'm proposing this challenge is because I actually think that you need to say yes a lot to opportunities, and that's how we kind of learned a lot, both you and me.
Exactly.
You know, just from saying yes with Hyperfix and with all the future things. And it was the same for me with Startup Society. I didn't really want to do the president thing. I just wanted to be like a CMO. But then Federico, the previous president, he really pushed me, and then I said yes, and I wouldn't change this decision. So instead of trying to come up with excuses with those no's, just think of the yeses first, and then compare them with no's. And if it's still a no, then fair enough. But it's likely that it's going to be a yes.
Awesome. So for the next week, you have to be a yes man or yes woman. And let's see if your life transforms. Please DM us on Instagram, on Facebook, post on Instagram or Facebook. Let us know how it's going, if it helps you in your day-to-day life. We are curious about how you progress. Thank you very much, Mateusz.
Thanks so much, Csongor.
It was awesome talking to you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Awesome.